So here we are, sharing secrets of the soil with me, your host, Regen Ray. Hello, soil lovers, and welcome to another episode of Secrets of the Soil. I'm your host, Regen Ray, and it's been a little while. We took a little bit of a break, but I am back in the hot seat. Well, I'm actually standing. Got a few new things on the set. If you're joining us on the video, go check out our video version of the podcast. It's always a more better experience. But today, I'm joined by Jim and Michael. Welcome to Secrets of the Soil podcast.
Thank you, Ray. It's a pleasure to be here. After the brief talk here that we just had, I'm really excited and looking forward to this chat today.
Excellent. And Michael, how are you going?
I'm doing fantastic, Ray. Thank you so much for having me today, and I'm excited to be speaking to you and all the soil lovers out there. So this is fantastic.
Excellent. So share with our soil lovers a little bit about who you are and what you do in this amazing community that you've been building.
Well, we are Food Forest Abundance and the Freedom Farm Academy. We launched about 18 months ago after I spent about 15 years obsessed with the question, which has continuously evolved. How do we catalyze a shift in awareness that leads to mass adoption of loving our planet, of treating our planet with love and respect and being stewards like we're meant to be? And through that obsession, which has now turned into a joyful obsession, we have the solutions to all the world's biggest problems. We being the Permaculture Network and the soil lovers and the freedom lovers out there. And our joyful duty to our posterity is to bring those solutions to as many people as possible.
Here, stand for that. Everyone knows that my passion for soil is growing and growing every minute. And as soon as I started digging deeper, I haven't stopped digging. Michael, what was your passion to come into this soil space and fill everyone's mind with abundance?
You know, it's funny because I was fixated on the problem of what's going on in the world from a very early age. And so I made it my internal mission to be the antithesis of what I saw the problem being, which is control and dependence. So we've got this controlling force that has really almost usurped the role of mother and father and kind of kept us in this infant-like state of being dependent on them. And so the solution to that, I always saw being self-reliance, taking responsibility for my own existence. And it's funny because I actually found permaculture later in life, and the prime directive of permaculture speaks about the only ethical decision to be made. And that is one that I made for myself and that I'm hoping to inspire others to choose. And that is that the prime directive of permaculture states the only ethical decision is to take responsibility for our own existence and that of our children. Make it now. So that's what I hope to help people do.
100%. You know, I sit around circles and I'll go to these, events that people are trying to put solutions together, and they're all pointing fingers. They're saying it's the government, it's this, it's the legislation, it doesn't let me do this. And I say, no, we need to point the fingers back at us. Take responsibility and be the change you want to see. You're both speaking my language and I'm loving this. I want to go a little bit more into how did you guys meet, come across the same path? Was it how did that all kind of happen? And then was this business already blooming before you met, or was this a whiteboard idea that you launched together?
So it started out, after many different iterations of looking for solutions to bring to the world, building really fancy greenhouses and aquaponics and hydroponic systems, and really even building off-grid communities and planting thousands of fruit trees. I was going through this interesting period of life, and about 2 years ago, I let go of the fear. Because fear is a control mechanism. Fear is an energetic state of being. Mm-hmm. And I've got 4 daughters. So after learning about the destruction, the mining of soil, the poisons that are coming at us from all these directions, I was focused on the problem. And then I let go and I said, I'm going to be aware of the problem. In permaculture, we love to turn the problem into the solution. So it's really important that we're aware of the depth and level of the problem. And then how do we use that knowledge to inspire and empower the solution, not to coerce or manipulate or force the solution. There's no mandates involved with what we're doing. There's no patents, no NDAs, no non-competes. And so 18 months ago, I was on the high wire with Dale Bigtree. He recognized, after I wrote him a speech, he recognized the value of the message that we are bringing to humanity. And at that time, there were 3 people on our team. And now, 18 months later, we have over 1,300 people globally. We are in 15 countries helping people grow food in almost every U.S. state. And it's just been a epic ride because we strategized for this, we planned for this. And that's how I was so fortunate to meet Michael Hoffman, who I respect so much. He's living the life off grid in Montana. So I won't steal your fire, Michael, but that's how it started. 18 months ago was really the catalyst for food forest abundance, and it's exploded globally since then.
I love that.
Yeah, and
that's flame, Michael. Let's hear this fire burn. Tell me about this off-grid life.
Beautiful. The fire is literally burning right now because that is what we use as our primary source of heat is a wood stove. But I actually found Food Forest Abundance through Jim doing a podcast much like yours. He was on the Higher Side Chats with Greg Carlwood. And I, as I said earlier, had been on this personal path for a very long time, looking at how I could live this way, how I could teach my children to live this way. And we had actually been designing a straw bale off-grid homestead in New Mexico, had the land, all of that. And then when the events of 2020 transpired and the world decided to go crazy, it became very clear that New Mexico isn't where we wanted to raise our children. And so we decided to move our family to Montana and to this off-grid cabin out here. And with this being such a strong personal passion for me, I had always thought of different ways that I could turn that personal passion into a professional one. And it's funny because actually the model we're doing now, the Freedom Farm Academy, is exactly what has always been my dream and my vision. But when I heard Jim on the Higher Side Chats and he was talking about turning lawns into food forests and just the simple yet powerful solution offered through permaculture, it was like, sign me up. How can I get on board? So I called him right away and we got to chatting and I told him about what I'm doing here and the rest is history, as they say.
I can relate, Michael. When I met Helen and Hugo who set up Farming Secrets, I had that same kind of like watching the video going, why is this not everywhere? Like we need to get this out everywhere, quick, you know, and like, that's how I became a partner in this business and led me to where I am today. So I totally get when you meet the right person, you're just like, sign me up, I'm all in. And you know, it's awesome. And then you're driven on passion and purpose. And we've thrown this word around called food forests. Let's paint a little bit of a picture in case someone doesn't know what this beautiful oasis of food forest means.
A food forest is a designed agricultural system that mimics natural systems. It's biomimicry. It's looking at and observing what plants and guilds work together in what zones relative to sun and shade and wind and water and all the different factors that are in an ecosystem, and designing it to produce the largest yield, right? The crop, the most amount of food on the lowest amount of input. So a food forest is not only a sustainable food production system. I don't even like that word. It's abundance factory. It's a magically diversified and abundant food production system. You can put a designed food forest in the ground and you can walk away for 30 years or for 5,000 years, like the Amazon rainforest, which, by the way, was a designed food forest 5,000 years ago. And you can look that up. It's pretty interesting. So that's what a food forest is. It's basically when we take, and I'll go a little deeper, there's 44 million acres of lawn in the United States with a lot of ornamental plants. The lawn takes more poisons and human resources than any other crop and does not provide us food. When we take the ornamentals and 30 or 40 or 50% of our lawns and we grow edible landscapes without poisons, we reverse deforestation and mass extinction and cancer and diabetes and heart disease. And we end hunger and we end tyranny just by doing what's best for us as individuals in our own landscapes.
Yeah, 100%. And the worst is that most of those lawns are now getting turned into synthetic lawns. So they're not even green leaves that are photosynthesized. It's just like crazy. Yeah, no, definitely the lawn is the biggest scam that we've all kind of been signed up to. It's like you got to mow it, you got to take care of it, you got to put all the chemicals into it, you got to look after it. And that's what you spend your weekends doing, as opposed to picking abundance food from your own orchard and feeding yourself.
Yeah, and to really help frame that for people when they're thinking about what does a food forest mean in my lawn, right? Because if maybe I only have a 1/4 acre backyard, right? It's called a food forest because a forest is usually the most simple ecosystem someone can think of connecting to. You can see it in action. You can see all the different layers. So it's very easy to help someone think of a forest of food. And what that means is a self-fertile ecosystem. So you don't see somebody out there watering and pruning and fertilizing the forest. It just grows. It's just nature growing it. So if you just devoted a part of your landscape to creating an ecosystem, doesn't have to necessarily be a forest, but a thriving self-fertile ecosystem where all of the plants are working together to produce food and medicine for your body, then that is really the idea here. And it's amazing too, because nature wants to do that. And so you see these little weeds pop up that people think, oh, that's trying to kill my lawn or my grass. And it's funny because oftentimes those weeds are actually trying to help remediate the soil. Yeah. And they often are also edible and or medicinal. So it's, we got to change those perspectives, right?
Yep, definitely on that mission as well, changing the perspective of weeds to be kind of signal plants. It's saying, hey, I'm here because I'm compact, and I'm fixing it for you. Don't kill me. Like I'm a free worker that you don't have to pay or give taxes to or health insurance. In fact, I'll make you healthier, Yeah. So I love that. Yeah. Changing those paradigms is 100%, the more we have these type of conversations and the people in the room and talking and shedding light to this and just sparking that interest for someone to think differently. And it's not all weeds are attacking us.
I was horrified moving out here. I mean, we're on 12 acres, about an hour from the nearest city. And we do live off a county maintained road, however. And so my wife and I were driving home and she gave these people an earful because they were actually spraying for what they call noxious weeds on the side of the road. And it's like, we moved out of the city to get away from that nonsense. And you look at what they classify as noxious weeds. And really all it is a weed that cattle or ruminants don't graze on. So they're saying, oh, deer doesn't eat that, or my cow's not going to eat it, so it doesn't have value. And yet you see things like thistle on there, which is edible from root to flower. It is medicinal, it's nutritious, it's amazing. And yet they're out here trying to spray poison to stop it from growing. So we definitely need to change those and speak up about. And
I agree. And it's because it's looked at the individual. The thistle on its own is not edible, but it's providing a network of communication and mycelium and minerals under the ground that's growing the edible food, the pastures next to it. It's like it's working in a system. We need to zoom out and look at the many parts that make up the whole. But and this is, the issue with a lot of studies, it's so isolated. It's like, is this plant good for cattle? No. Okay, bad everywhere, just default blankets, ideas. So we need to break those kind of, and that's what I love about, permaculture and someone who's studying it myself. And, I kind of grew up in a permaculture designed garden without even knowing it, an Italian background, little Italy village, kind of design in my backyard. I just thought that's what everyone's backyard looked like. We had chooks, we had, all the produce. There was no grass. It was all edible, production part, and so that's what I grew up in. And then I went away and went into the business world and tried to hustle. And then I've been brought back to my roots to go, no, soil and food is the mission that we need to be on,
To your roots. I love the use of that in that spot, right? We are the soil. We are rooted in this land, right? We might be able to move around, but when we take off our shoes and we connect with the energy of the earth, the energy is our roots.
Yeah, 100%. Crazy. I love this. And so what got you all interested in this, Jim? I'll start with you. Like, is there a point in your kind of timeline where you went, I need to be a champion of this?
Yes. I remember it very clearly. It was a time in my life I had started a business in the mortgage industry when I was 29. By the time I was 33, we did about $1.3 billion in revenue. I bought a boat, lived on the ocean for a year, and I was looking for my next thing to do. And I found Costa Rica. And I fell in love with Costa Rica. And while there was a bunch of expats sitting around a table and talking. And two expats at the end of the table were talking about 9/11 and conspiracies and all this stuff. And I said, "You're crazy," with a smile on my face. I then learned that they weren't crazy. I tried to disprove them. And then I went down the rabbit hole and I said, oh my gosh, there are psychopaths that intend to control the energy of humanity and the world, right? When Kissinger said, if you want to control people, control food, that wasn't just the ramblings of a madman. That was the strategy spoken by a man who has met with every U.S. president, the head of the Council of Foreign Relations, the person who appointed Klaus Schwab, the guy who says you're going to own nothing and be happy. So I started looking at this whole picture and I had time. So I dug into it 12 hours a day. And at the same time, I learned permaculture and I learned what we're doing to our soil and our earth and our forests. I also learned the solution. You know, Bill Mollison, I broke free at one level when I read Bill Mollison's quote, though the problems of our world are increasingly complex, the solutions remain embarrassingly simple. I started to sob. And from that moment forward, I had 2 daughters at that time. Now I have 4. That was my primary motivation, is to do everything in my ability to help to create a regenerative, abundant world for my kids.
Yeah. Love that. And I agree. And it is those aha moments and, it doesn't matter when you discover permaculture or when you discover your love for soil or these solutions. I meet people who are in their 70s or 80s and they're like, I need to share everything I know and download my whole brain because I need to leave it here for the next generations, and they almost get angry that, their time is running out. And I'm like, but you're just doing something, which is better than nothing. So I love that. Michael, do you have that kind of aha experience where you kind of went, oh, this is why I do what I do and I want to keep doing this?
Yeah, there's kind of a twofold answer to that. So one was an experience that I had with plant medicine when I was rather young and really awakened the spiritual side of my being and showed me that nature is the truth, that I don't try and push religion on anybody because I actually believe that religion destroys your connection with God. But seeing that we are in this created perfect space and we can see that in nature. And a few years after that, when I was just about 18 years old, I was introduced to the work of Max Egan and Michael Tellinger and a lot of these other people who actually were talking about the hidden history of humanity, civilizations that came before us. And it became very clear to me that if we were being lied to about where we came from, we're being lied to about where we are right now. And I'm seeing the toxicity of where we're at right now, the problems in the water, the problems in the food, the problems over here, that it became very clear to me that there is a coherent agenda to separate man from nature and to become a intermediary in the connection to nature. So you see an artificial replication of nature in terms of food, in terms of even lawns. Lawn isn't even good enough now. Now you need a plastic lawn. So you see how we're just going further and further down this road away from what is created to what is synthetic. And to me, the solution is to come home to what is natural, to literally remember. And I say that word because if you think of dismember, to be dismembered is to lose a part of yourself. To remember is to reincorporate a part of yourself that was lost. Wow. So if we can remember that connection to nature, that's the solution. And so that's really what set me on my course from life from that point.
Goosebumps, my friend, goosebumps. I hope the soul listeners, soul lovers are hearing it as well. It's like, that is so powerful. I think that's exactly, and that's why I used the word before, back to our roots. And like, we need to, slow down and we need to remember. Oh, that's such a great word. And when you say it with that little slight pause in the middle of it, it just makes it so much more powerful. It's just because we're so busy. Everything's about fast, double speed, more consume. When you slow down and actually hear the poeticness of words. And even healthy soil. I had that kind of breakthrough where it's like, it literally says heal thy soil, healthy soil. It's like, it's right in front of our faces, like the words in the lexicon, it's there, it's screaming at us what we need to do. It's just,
you just nailed it. It's all right in front of us. And why don't we see it? Well, the other one I think is amazing is governmente, which means mind control. The opposite of governmente is really simply a free mind. And there are two of my teachers. In fact, I had a good hour and 10-minute chat this morning with Michael Tellinger. It was just fantastic. And we're talking about how the lost civilizations and this lost knowledge, where did it go? Well, his story is a lie. And his story is all about, Goethe said, none are more hopelessly enslaved than those who falsely believe they are free. And when I learned that, and then going beyond that, there's two quotes. In fact, this one that I learned from Michael Tellinger, this is Max Planck, the father of quantum physics and that kind of theory. I regard matter a derivative from consciousness. Right. That's one. And if we think about and experience what the meaning of that is, it's profound. And then Napoleon Hill deducted pretty much the exact same thing when he said, whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. After studying the most successful people in the history of the world, that's what he came to realize. So then that begs the question, what can we conceive and believe as individuals, as communities, and as a global community? And when we can conceive and believe and create a pathway to the freedom of the minds of humanity, well, guess what? I can see it very clearly. And so can all of us here at Food Forest Abundance, because we talk about it every day. So this is the process of inspiring and empowering leaders to conceive and believe their own freedom, number one, and then the freedom and wellness of their family, and then it spreads out from there.
Beautiful, poetic. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think they're amazing quotes. Soul lovers, if you have to, rewind and re-listen to those quotes because they are so powerful. And sometimes, we're busy driving and doing our own thing, or we might be sitting in a tractor and listening to the podcast, and we are busy. That is the fact of life. But slow down, rewind, re-listen, and remember what we're here to do today. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, I want to get into the nitty-gritty of like what your services are and how these food forests come to life and some of the work and projects you're working on. Soil lovers, stick with us. Hello, soil lovers. I hope you're enjoying today's guest and this podcast, but I wanted to just let you know that when you get excited about soil, just as you're hearing about our guests, then you will want to check out the Soil Learning Center. The Soil Learning Center is a hub that we put together and digitalized all the content over the years that were originally on DVD into this online learning experience. So if any of our guests or any of the topics that we speak about during the podcast whet your appetite and you want to get your hands dirtier and dig deeper and get educated around different things around soil, whether it be biodynamics, permaculture, whether it be using a microscope, or whether it just be hanging out with other like-minded educators, mentors, and facilitators, then the Soil Learning Center is a place for you to hang out and dig deeper. That's the soillearningcenter.com. We have lots of different programs, courses, and even a membership. So if you want to belong to a community of other soil lovers, then that's the place to hang out. Well, until we meet again, enjoy the rest of this podcast. Back to the program. Welcome back, soil lovers. You're hanging out with Regen Ray, Jim, and Michael. We're talking all things food, freedom, abundance, and everything about, that being a self-sufficient warrior of the world and creating the life that you want for yourself and your family. Jim or Michael, whoever wants to take the lead on this question, what are some of the things that you do and offer as a service, and how do you help people turn their kind of idea of a food forest into reality?
All right, I'll start, and then Michael can talk about the Freedom Farm Academy, which is so epic.
Epic.
So it starts with permaculture design. The principles and the ethics of permaculture design are the solution to all of it. It means permanent culture. It originally, I believe, meant permanent agriculture, but it's really a holistic approach. What elements do we need to design into our societies so that we can be completely self-reliant at the local level? Right? That's the key. And that's what permaculture does. So we now are partnered with over 45 designers from around the world. A permaculture designer is somebody who has dedicated their life to learning this art, this skill, and the strategy and the principles and fundamentals of how to design these freedom systems into the landscape. So that's what it starts with, design. And then the next level, which models the company that went from 0 to 1.3 billion that I had about 15 years ago, is how do we scale this? Right? And that's where the food forest, the cooperative partnership came about. Now, a food forest cooperative partner is somebody who goes out into their community and helps their neighbors grow food. Now, it's an incredible business model in the midst of a food supply chain disaster to not only grow your own food, because if you're the only one with food in your community, I do not consider that food security. I consider food security when your neighbors are also growing food. Right?
100%.
So then we figured out and asked a lot of questions. How do we scale this? And then that's where it led to the Freedom Farm Academy. Michael, take it away.
Beautiful. Yeah. So the Freedom Farm Academy is really, you can think of it as a fractal of food forest abundance as a whole. So as a whole, we're offering consultation, design, and installation services. And we were trying to figure out how can we get a local representation of that someone can actually see and experience and taste and touch. Because a way that Jim's put it in the past, which I think is a beautiful way of really articulating where this came about, is that what he's set up there at Galt's Landing in Florida, when people originally toured it and Jim would talk with them about the vision and all they're seeing is, sand and dirt, it's like, okay, good luck. That's awesome. I hope to see it happen. Now, when someone walks through it and they're surrounded by food and life and vitality, they get that remembering. They start to feel the inspiration. They get tears in their eyes and it's like, sign me up. How do I get my own food forest? How do I do this? So we saw that there's a need and an opportunity for that call to action for people. So what Freedom Farm Academy is, and a good way to think of it, is a version of the Apple Store for self-reliance or self-sufficiency, in that someone can show up, they can interact with it and experience it, and then we empower them to take that experience home through the services that we offer, as well as the strategic partnerships that we make in people with other organizations in this realm of self-reliance. So we exist to help people grow their own food, but there's companies out there that exist to help you harvest your own energy or help you harvest your own water. And so by cooperating rather than competing with those organizations, we can get greater community buy-in, we can spread the abundance, spread the wealth, and really bring those solutions to people's doorstep.
Love that. I 100%. And you even mentioned this at the start, where there are no NDAs and it's not like, we can't keep this a secret. Like, it needs to be out there. That's the whole play on the Farming Secrets brand, is that we wanted to share all the secrets that all these farmers were doing in isolation. And it's like, with the more we share it, the more our neighbors heal, and then the land and the community. One of the biggest devastations that's happened here in regional parts of Australia is that the communities have all broken apart and there's no community spirit. Who wants to go out there and live there and work the land and be a caretaker and bring the economy back, And we are seeing trends of the regenerative movement kind of bring those younger farmers and new first generation farmers excited about healing the land and bringing back those ecosystems and the biodiversity, and hopefully rebuild those communities. But there's not a lot of support out there, because the system doesn't want that. It wants us disconnected, sitting, and I live in a city at the moment. So I've got these kind of transparency worlds where I live my abundant life through the guests, and what I do is my work. And, I'd go on virtual tours on farms and so forth, but that's all part of that, believing and conceiving and then achieving, my living my vision through others at the moment, because that's the best I can do. And that's, something is better than nothing. So, yeah, so I definitely, hear you on all those levels. And I think it's amazing, and bringing all those, minds and thought leaders together and sharing without competition, without fear. Competition comes from scarcity, it's going to get stolen and they can't make money. And it's like, but when you gift it, you make more, you're helping others achieve what they want, and you can be more impactful,
Yeah.
So
And there's a recognition of the value exchange. When we create value for people without expectation, we simply do it because it's a wonderful thing to do. It's the best way to serve, and it also reciprocates. People are reciprocal. So it's such a no-brainer. And I'd like to kind of tell a little story about the Freedom Farm Academy, because I think it'll help people see, like when you were talking about you're living in the city and you're a soil lover, I thought, oh my gosh, what an opportunity, Ray, to help you find a piece of land and create your studio out of a Freedom Farm Academy, which is simply another word for an off-grid homestead with all of the food, water, and energy needs met on site. And then turning that into a demonstration and education facility as well. Now, check this out. We are adding a classroom at Galt's Landing, 25 kids. We're going to have 2 teachers. And the students are going to have as their primary objective in their classroom, 2 to 3 hours a day, they are going to learn how to and become self-reliant with food, water, energy, and all of the basics of life. Then their next level is going to be to go to their families' yards in small groups, 4 to 5 kids, design and install a food forest at their families' houses. So pretty soon, within a couple of years, every family is completely self-reliant. Now imagine a family paying $750 a month for a private school, but in return for that $750 a month, they're getting all of the food that they need to thrive right there.
Amazing.
Then once they're handled as individuals and families, then the next level is the community, going into parks and schools and churches. We just did an incredible food forest installation at a school this past week. It's nonstop. It's fun.
It is. And seeing younger people, there's a lot of nature plays that are popping up here in Australia. Instead of going to childcare, you go to nature play, and gosh, the spirit that gets created there. There's one here at a community garden, and it's just amazing seeing these kids make, mud pancakes and playing in the soil and seeing soil as like good, not bad and dirty and germy, and, clean your hands. And, then they pick food and they make beetroot pancakes, and, they tie dye with natural dyes from earth and nature. And they understand that everything they need is right there with abundance in front of them.
Well, when you actually address this with the youth and you get them involved and excited about living this way, you are literally sowing seeds for a brighter future. And so when you're starting to involve people from all ages within the community, you start to form these connections and you start to bring the common unity back into community. And through doing that, you've got these people, these like-minded people getting together over what is the most natural thing we could be doing, growing and harvesting our own food, our own sustenance, our own existence. And those people are going to be able to support each other, even if the supply chain can't. Mm-hmm. So it's just such an epic model. And it really excites me that this is actually a way for the average listener, for the average soil lover out there, if you want to start being a bit more self-reliant, taking these steps and actually living in the security and abundance for your own household, you can leverage that as a profit-bearing model for yourself and your community. So it's just it's a very exciting opportunity, and it's a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, I love that. A new word that came across my world recently was this movement of there is self-sufficiency, but community sufficiency. And so what you spoke about as well before, Jim, that if you're the only place that has the food, you're not going to be self-sufficient. You're going to be targeted for people coming to take your food in a place where there's you have and have nots. But if you build a really resilient community, and the other thing with self-sufficiency is that people feel like they have to be everything. They've got to have the chickens, they've got to have the eggs, they've got to have the storage, they've got to be expert at everything. But when you rely on a community, someone's got the eggs sorted, someone's got the jam sorted, someone's got the bread sorted, and you work together and everyone has their craft and their skills lifting the whole community together. And I just thought that's, if we focus on community sufficiency, self-sufficiency just happens by default,
Yep. It's how every old community used to be
how my grandparents.
We centralized everything.
Yeah.
And it's turning that perspective, right, of what can I get from my community to what can I give to my community. Yeah. And so when I moved out here, it's funny because I moved from Washington, D.C., metropolitan area, surrounded by tons and tons of people, yet knowing none of my neighbors, to New Mexico, which was a little bit more spread out and still fairly densely populated. And I got to know a few more people. Now I'm in the middle of nowhere. We're way spread out, and I know more neighbors than I ever have in my life.
Wow.
And, I was looking at all of these amazing people, all of these amazing connections I've made. So yes, I'm in the middle of nowhere, but through getting to know my community, I know that I've got an emergency room doctor just a few houses down, a few properties down. And, I'm living far away from the nearest hospital. I've got 2 small kids. That's incredibly important to know. Yeah. I also am off grid with energy, and to know that I've got an electrician down the other way and what his skill set is. It's like you start to meet all these different people, and I know that I am passionate about permaculture and growing food. So, hey, maybe that's something I can contribute to my community. And if we can all get together and start sharing, you start to see these transactions happen without using money. We help each other out because we have different skill sets. And I think that changing that idea of what a value system is to just intrinsic and inherent value. I mean, what could be more valuable than having the ability to support life?
Yeah.
For your property to support life. So
Yeah.
Don't think about in terms of dollars or what can, how much am I going to charge you to come help me out do this? Think about what can you give back and forth?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I think, we've lived in a world now where so many generations have been in this money system. And I feel like there is a massive change about to happen, because it is it's wit's end. It can't support, the way it's working anymore. And so we are going to have to get comfortable with a new whatever it is, or we go back to like the way it used to be. My grandparents lived in a village where you come to the common plot, and who had the cattle, who had the goat, who was milking, who had the chickens, and it was owned by everyone, by the village, for the village. You would leave things on the seat. There's extra pumpkins, and and it's just like we need to get back to that kind of roots, and we live in apartments now with thousands of people, and you don't even know who's 3 centimeters away from you, if we're living on top of each other and we don't know their names or what they do or how they can add value to the community.
You're so right. Yeah. And it's seen its scale. And that's the other thing. It's important that it's scalable. Like the investors who are investing in putting up these Freedom Farm Academies, what are they actually investing in? Is it a blue sky business? No. They're growing food. They're investing in turning their property into a food, water, and energy self-reliant system, which when you plant a food forest the first year, whatever it costs you, let's say you put $100,000 in the ground. That's a lot of food. Well, the next year, just based on the size of the plants, if you were going to buy those same plants at that size the year later, it would be $200,000. Right. And that's in a normal inflationary situation. We're in the midst of a food supply chain collapse. So what's that food forest going to be worth in a year, 2 years, 3 years, as it starts producing a massive yield? It's going to be infinitely more valuable, in my opinion, than the fiat that created it. So we look at fiat as shit. It's compost. And let's turn that fiat into food.
I can't wait for that day that we threw it all in the pile and let it decompose. Yeah. And for those who are listening, fiat is the traditional or the money system we have today. If you don't know, that's what it's referred to as the fiat money system. And if we really knew how it worked, that's a rabbit hole that I enjoyed going down and going, if I did this business, it would be a scam and a Ponzi scheme and I'd be locked up for it. Yet it's allowed to operate. We just ticked 8 billion people apparently on the planet this week. And that's a bit of a milestone. And I think we've struggled since, 7.5 and probably even more, but now we're at 8 billion. Jim, what are some of the things that you think will be the way that we do feed 8 billion people on the planet in the future?
To think global, but act local. And also there's a lot of those numbers are massively manipulated. China just did a new census and they expect to have 300 million to 500 million people by 2050. In other words, a decrease of half of their population because of their policies in the past. Japan and Europe and the United States, we're going down in population. And right now, it's the first time in the history where we have mass population decline all over the world. The birth rates, all of the birth rates around the world have plummeted in the last year. So, and by the way, even before that, population was never the issue. It was the insane, unsustainable use of resources that was the issue. Shipping food from 1,500 miles away is the issue, right? Turning our lawns into food forests is the solution.
Yeah. And it's funny because you look at the people who have this idea or this belief system that we are overpopulated, and you have to wonder, have you ever traveled across the country? Because if you do, all you're going to see is open space and bountiful resources and abundance just waiting to be stewarded. Yep. So yeah, I don't think there's really ever been an overpopulation issue. It's been a poor design. Our society was poorly designed. Our cities were poorly designed. It was not designed with these principles of permaculture. But I'm also glad, Jim, that you brought up the idea of birth rates, because I need to double check this statistic. So, listeners out there, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I actually heard something that today, over the last year, Australia's birth rates were down something like 75%. And that's not a unique problem to Australia. I mean, it's unheard of how much the birth rates have fallen. So yes, we might be in a situation where there's a lot of people now, but I'm very curious to see in 20, 30 years, what is it actually going to look like? Yeah,
that's right. And I agree. I think I've got lots of friends and people who, they don't want kids. They don't want to bring kids into this world and think it's, it's broken, it's not working. And why would we put more stress? And it's very, and I agree. And I think lots of people have come on and said, our problem isn't, population growth, it is decline. And also, we do have the ability to, feed people more nutrient. It's not a food shortage. It's not a, crisis there. It's a citizen crisis. It's the way we have been told that we need to consume more and eat more. And nothing is nutrient density. We're not getting the nutrients we need. So we're just consuming substance. And, you just got to follow who funds all the research and see, that's why we're getting those answers that we need to eat 6 times a day. If soil funded this research, it would say eat once a day really nicely.
Exactly. I just saw the couple of reports came up. One was the Deagle report that said that the U.S., this is a government funded report, said the U.S. population will be under 100 million in the not too distant future. And I'm not talking about tens of years. I'm talking about less than that, a number that's hard for me to even comprehend. And also, it's about reuse of resources. When we expose and take out the poisons, if that's all we did, or take out the fluoride and the glyphosate and the aluminum oxide and the chemicals that they're spraying to reflect the sunlight, we just took out the poisons, which happen to be funded by BlackRock. All these companies are invested in by a company called BlackRock. Now, my name of our company is Food Forest Abundance. Your soil. Right? We typically name our companies as a reflection of what our vision is and what our hopes are. BlackRock is a pretty interesting name, and it's run by a computer named Aladdin. Now, this is common knowledge. Anybody can look this up. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's just a fact. So the computer runs the financial world, and it invests in the companies that create the poisons. So let's not go to war. The best way we can be revolutionaries is to simply exit and build our own free systems. I took that from John Bush. He's a friend of mine. But to take out our own energy from that system and put our energy towards nature, and we're better off in every single way.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's exactly what COVID did for me. I started learning about if I don't have money in a bank, which bank is the most ethical? In Australia, we have forced 401ks, or what we call super, which is like the biggest scam of taking people's money and giving it to the government or these companies to do whatever they want with it, and we lose all control, and they are basically manipulating the market, call it whatever you want. And it is computers making these decisions, and very similar to BlackRock. If we took all the super out of the Australian stock exchange, there's not many people who actually voluntarily put their money in it. And people just don't realize that, and taking back that control. People are moving their money out of super and setting up what they call self-managed super funds here in Australia. And it's that being, responsible with what you're doing. And if you have some ability to go, no, I want to manage that, not you, and I'll choose to put it into farmland, or I'll choose to put it into crypto, or I'll choose to just do whatever I want with it. If it's locked until I'm 60, So yeah, those like little things is, creating the power back to us and being able to make conscious decisions for the greater good of, humanity.
Absolutely. We can change the world through thoughtful decision making. I mean, we don't have to pick up arms and go, make blood in the streets. All we have to do is simply choose between good in life and evil in death for every decision we make throughout the day. And it's really that simple. It doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. Is my attention, is my energy going toward the destruction of life or toward the creation of life? So I think if we're really more thoughtful about what we're consuming, and I don't just mean in terms of what we're buying, what thoughts are we consuming? What messages, what information are we consuming? Because where attention goes, energy flows. And so I actually say it to my dad all the time. It's funny, and Dad, I love you, but he watches a lot of these horror movies and things like that. He loves those. And my mom always talks about how he wakes up with nightmares and he thinks it's funny. But it's like, if that's the reality that you're living in, that's what you're consuming, it's going to linger within your spirit. It's going to linger through your dreams and your experiences. So yeah, just being more thoughtful in our everyday decisions. Yeah. That's how we change the world.
Yep. And the choice of watching this video instead of that video, and the algorithm, it will eventually change to keep showing you more of what you see, and so that's the danger of these algorithms, is that you watch a couple of these kind of videos that set you up to think negatively, and then all of a sudden every video is about that negative thought and that. And I think, we need to proceed with caution. It's not about, I feel like if we go through a massive change, that's why I called it a change before, because it's like, call it a collapse or whatever, but it's like, it will bring back a new something that I think will be very planet-based and earth healing, value driven. And I do say that our biggest, when people were taken to the streets to protest and all that, like, all good. But if everyone just took $1,000 out of their banking system, that would send a much bigger pulse through the system to say, we don't agree. Just $1,000.
Yep. I just posted about this the other day. If people took that protest energy, that day that they're out yelling at the world and at the governmente, and they went in their backyard and they started growing food, the protests in Brazil, 3 protests, and within 60 days, 90 days, 6 months, Brazil would be food self-reliant.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Beautiful, beautiful. I think it's such great things. We are getting to the tail end of our conversation, which is very sad because I've loved this and every second, and we are so in sync on so many levels. I'm really grateful that we have been able to have this conversation and share it with the soil lovers. But while we do our signature question, I'll start off with you, Jim. You are about to become the voice of the soil. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Excellent. So you have embodied and become the soil, and you've now got a voice. What would you tell us 8 billion people on the planet?
I would say I'm alive. I'm alive. I am an accumulation of billions, trillions, infinite living organisms. Quit putting poisons on me. Quit destroying me. Quit mining me, because I am the immune system of your planet. When toxins come in, then my job is to turn those toxins into nutrients and minerals. But when you pour on the toxins on me at a rate that I cannot handle, then just like your immune system in your body, it's going to eventually fail. So quit putting poisons on me. Instead, cover me up with a nice blanket of mulch, of leaves, of green plants, and let me provide for you.
Awesome. Thank you, soil. And you do it without any expectations as well. Michael, it's your turn to be the voice of the soil. Are you ready?
Do it.
Excellent. You've become the soil. You embodied its energy. What would you say to us on the planet?
I would say, please stop thinking about what you can take from me and start thinking about what you can give back to me. Because if you give back to me, I will give back to you twofold. So anything that you put back into me, I will return with a surplus.
Amazing. Thank you for your abundance energy. Well, Michael and Jim, it has been an absolute pleasure chatting with you today. But before we bounce, I want to ask, where can people hang out more with you? Because your energy is just amazing, and I want our soul lovers to hang out in your inner circle. How can people find more about you?
Well, thank you, Ray, so much for everything. So foodforestabundance.com is our primary website. We are on social media and Telegram. We also have the Jim Gale show. We just recorded it with Michael Tellinger. I think it was our 33rd episode, and it's really a lot of fun. So anywhere you can find Food Forest Abundance on social media, we would love to collaborate with you.
Awesome. Michael, you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, so foodforestabundance.com, that's the place where you can find all of the amazing services that we offer, as well as ways that you can get involved. And if any of you soil lovers out there were inspired by what you're doing, what we're doing here, you want to learn more, you want to find out how you can get involved, please don't hesitate to reach out right to me. You can find me at michael@foodforestabundance.com. I would love to talk with you about how we can get you started.
Awesome. And soil lovers, as you always know, all those links and call to actions will be around the video. And if you need a reason to start the soil conversation, then head over to the Secrets of the Soil podcast, where we've just recently launched our merch. So you can wear the values of your soil on you so people can say, what do you mean get outside and get your hands dirty? And that'll be a beautiful way to start a conversation, just as the sticker on the wall behind me if you're watching on the video, which I always think is the best way because you get to see our smiles and our beautiful shirts that I've wearing a very leafy plant today, kind of blending into the background. So get onto the video podcast version because it is definitely the best experience to get all our energy and our beautiful faces. And, there is just so much more that's conveyed through our faces and body language. So that's the best way to listen to the podcast. Jim, Michael, thank you so much for the work that you're doing. An absolute gift to the planet and humanity and our soils.
Thank you, Ray. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks for having us.
No worries. Well, soil lovers, until next time, get outside, get your hands dirty, and keep digging deeper into the wonderful world of soil. I'm Regen Ray. I'll see you next time. Wait, before you hit the skip button, if you're a soil lover and love listening to my podcast, then I want you to discover more by getting access to my Patreon, where I share behind the scenes and bonus content that doesn't always make the conversations on the podcast. So head over to secretsofthesoil.com/support, where for a very small fee, you get to hang out with me and other soil lovers, where we get to geek out about soil and get access to exclusive content. It's very exclusive. No, not really. It's just a lot of fun and a way that we get to support this podcast together in order so that we can have deeper conversations all about soil from mentors all around the world. So what are you waiting for? Go on, show your support and token appreciation for this podcast. Until next time. Well, soil lovers, that's enough secrets for one episode. I really hope that you enjoyed all the secrets shared during this conversation. But hey, let's not keep it a secret. Please share this podcast around and make sure that you like it and leave us a review, because that really helps spread the secrets of the soil. Until next time, remember, get outside, get your hands dirty, and keep digging deeper into your soils.